My approach is to work with copywriting as my fundamental skill, my core offer, and then add stories to create what I call strategic storytelling. That means using stories to hold interest and engage, but at the same time, using copywriting to answer the question, what's in it for me? Which is often the number one question that people have. My intention for today's training is how to use stories for your about page. It's a topic that holds interest on two dimensions, because one of the questions I get regularly is, I keep hearing how great storytelling is and how important it is to use stories in your copy, but how do I do it? And the other question I get is, your about page is so hard to write. How can I make it easier? So we're going to address both those points in this training. We're going to cover first 3 very quick tips to use stories in your about page. I'm going to use as an example Chris, who is an audio editor, and Beth, who is a copy editor. Didn't plan it, but we have 2 different types of editors who volunteered their about pages. And if you're listening and you would like to submit something for a future training, just get hold of me and we'll look into it, see if it fits. And then if there is time, we'll have a Q&A. And I'll always be available to answer questions afterward by email and perhaps an audio or a blog post. So let's get right into our 3 tips. Tip number 1 is, and this is very important, that your clients, your prospects come to your about page with questions. And they usually are not going to answer them out loud. They're not going to come, they may not even want to ask you these questions when they meet you in a meeting or at a phone call or in person. But what they want to know is, are you qualified to do what you say you're going to do? And second, are you easy to work with? They're not going to ask you that directly, but they're trying to figure that out because people are scared. I mean, let's face it, when you go to hire someone, if you're hiring a lawyer, you don't want to look stupid, and you don't want to have someone say, you're not very smart to get into this mess, are you? And if you're hiring a writer, you don't want someone who's going to look at your words and mess them up and then fight you when you want to make changes. You want people who are going to be fun to work with and make the project as much fun as possible. Tip number 2 is to share only your relevant history. We used to think of about pages as being a call to tell us about you, tell us who you are, what you're doing, all about who you are and your history, your life story. So we used to see a lot of life stories in our about pages. These days, we're not seeing as many stories. We're focusing much more on our target market, and we're writing about our clients, and we're avoiding rags to riches because they've just been overdone so much. And the advice to make you vulnerable is way overdone. I have talked about that in many places. Tip number 3 is to start your first step with their backstories. We're going to look at some today where I'm going to just imagine what I think the backstories are. If I were working with you in a consultation, we would have time before we even talked to look into who your clients are and what their backstories look like. And we go into so much more detail. But I'm going to work today with what I got from these participants who were gracious enough to volunteer their about pages for us to analyze and understand how we get this. So this is about Christopher, and I wanted to use Word because I want to be able to make a few changes on the fly as we go. So writemedia.com is his website. If you can look it up, it's a very simple website, which makes sense for him. Now, one of the things that you'll find is that someone like Chris is into audio big time. People who are into audio often kind of ignore a lot of aren't as much into creating visuals. So if you're like Chris, into audio a lot, then you might want to work with someone who is more into video, so you can then into visuals, so you can then use their input and say, okay, the irony is a lot of people who come to Chris for audio editing are going to be people who are the opposite. They do not work well in video. They don't play well with audio editing, with audio software. So they're going to be just the opposite. And what they want is to have someone who can work with audio, but they're going to be thinking visually as they hire someone for audio. So if you're an audio person, it's important to try to find someone who is more visual. And there are so many ways to do it. So I've had people say, well, I can't afford to hire you to write my website. And that's fine. But if that happens, what I can do is help you find someone maybe on Fiverr, and I can supervise them. So whatever budget you have, you can usually find a way to get a really good quality website that has some visuals. So let's look at Chris's client's backstory. And I've just come up with one. And this is based on what Chris saying, things like, I'm new to audio. I want to create a podcast. I know it will help my business, but my recordings are coming out with ums and uhs, bumping sounds. I just recorded a bunch of stuff with bumps. I have no idea where they're coming from. I don't know if we're bumping now. There's no way I can share them with an audience and get respect, let alone clients. And then why is it a problem? Well, I know I'm leaving money on the table every time people tell me I've got ideas and should get it out there. And then let's get into their fears. Everybody has fears before they hire someone. And these might be, and again, I'm guessing because I did not do a consultation with Chris, but I'm just looking at what I know about myself and people I know who hire audio editors. They're afraid it'll cost a fortune. The editor will take forever to get it done. And usually when you create audio, you want it fast. I mean, you don't want to wait for audio. Audio is one of those things that when you write it, it has immediacy. You want it out there. Usually we create our podcasts really, really fast before we want to release them. And what they've tried, and this gives you a lot about what they're looking for from you, why they're hiring you. So if someone said, I hired an audio editor, they were wasted, they didn't know what they were doing, I paid a fortune for equipment, I tried to do it myself. And these are the kinds of backstories that Chris could work with when he's writing his about page and actually the rest of the site. So let's move in. One thing I like that Chris did when he created this page, and you can see it on writemedia.com, is he doesn't call it about me. He says about, just about. And then it's divided into two parts, about you and about me, which is novel. It's not typical, but it's kind of, it really seems to work. And you might want something I'm going to be thinking about for the future. I like the, oops, we have a comment here. Oh, Beth is saying, nice. Thank you so much. The so his about you page, and I think she's referring to this about, I'm glad you like the presentation, but also you're referring to the about you and versus about me. This is a really good way of doing it. I wouldn't do it for everyone, but it may work for you, and it works well because I also like the simple language that Chris uses. You love the idea of adding audio. You see audio as another way to make connections and establish yourself. This is nice, clear, simple language. It is really, really good. And then, so what do you do? Talk about the need, and then this should be a lowercase y. So what do? You spend time learning from free and or paid resources that teach the basics. And Linda says, this is a great idea about you and me. And it is a good idea. Again, I wouldn't use it for everyone, but it works in some cases. So again, you have to be sure to name the page about, not about me. And then you need, so Chris, you've really contributed to a lot of people today. You need professional help. And this is really clear. You need professional help, and I'm here to provide that. You can share your message, sound great, save time, and be consistent without spending time on editing. And then he goes down to that. I help very clear about who the market is. Podcasters, trainers, and speakers produce and publish great spoken word audio without spending hours on editing. And this is, in the past, I bought, actually, these two paragraphs could be combined, because up here you say, be consistent without spending time, and here without spending hours. And you could combine these two into one paragraph where you make a especially strong point. When you combine them, maybe share your message, sound great, and be consistent. And again, save time then becomes redundant because you're talking about saving time, about not spending time on editing. And in the past, this is really good. And this is actually sort of morphing from about you to about me. In the past, I bought audio recording equipment I didn't need to buy. Before you make the same mistake, let me help you cut through the noise. This is good. And this is a very nice segue into him. So then we have about me. and I would put your full name here. My name is Christopher Wright. My experience with audio grew out of my desire to become a musician. This is in some ways what we call an origin story. It's how you got started. And if anything, it would be a good idea to expand on this. Instead of saying just a desire, talk a little about music, because I know from my own experience that musicians know a lot about audio. When I was having trouble with my own home studio, which is just words, no music, my neighbor, who was a musician, was able to help me a lot because he knew microphones, he knew sound systems, he knew recording, he knew pop filters, all these things. So being a musician really teaches you a lot. And I would add a few sentences to make that connection from how you are or have been a musician, how being a musician, you are forced to learn at a very high level about sound options and how you now use that when you work with people who only use the spoken word. And then here, I like this 4 years at SUNY Purchase, and it lets people know you went to college for 4 years. And not everyone will know that because they're not from New York, but so you might want to, I don't know, but that's fun. Maybe a branch of the state university or something. But people from New York may relate to SUNY Purchase, where I earned, this should be a lowercase w, where I earned a bachelor's degree. And in fact, instead of my 4 years, that's right, a bachelor's degree in studio composition. You might want to add a word or two about what studio composition is and why that's important to your market. But see, here we're getting into a little more about you. I experimented with audio editing. It's important to come across as confident and strong when you do this. So you could simply say, during and after my 4 years, I got involved with, or I learned, or I began working with audio editing. And then the audio editing became more consistent. I'm not sure what consistent means, but beginning in August 2009, I was a volunteer production assistant for an internet radio broadcaster. And talk about how that taught you and how it's something about how that made you an expert. It made you understand the problems of being on the internet in general. You started with radio and how that makes you realize how important that was and how you discovered so many mistakes people were making. And then today, I want to help you offer the best quality audio. Be a little more specific. Knowledge and experience I gained is, you could be much more specific than that. And then I would never say, although I am not a podcaster, trainer, or speaker, I've heard my share. You don't need to say that. Instead, focus on the positive. Focus on how many people you've worked with. And if you haven't worked with a lot of people, maybe look into ways you can start to work with people at a discount or even free to get the experience, the credentials, the testimonials. So start out with, you could be much stronger than this. Talk about what you've learned specifically and how you've helped people and why you're committed to helping people do what they're doing. And then you come down here and say, I would love to work with you, read about, this is fine. I do notice we're not covering services in this particular call, but you quote an hourly rate. And what I would suggest is to give people an idea of what that's going to mean. So if I have a 30-minute podcast, how much is it going to cost me for you to edit it on average? That's more relevant. I would rarely go with hourly rates anymore. I have been burned. I've worked with people who said, oh, my rate is just $30 an hour. And then they charge hundreds of dollars for something that I was shocked. I thought it would just be an hour or two. So you don't want to shock people. So it might be a good idea to tie your rates to your fees into what people could expect. So this is, again, my suggestion would be to dig more into what they want and make sure that you're responding to that here when you're talking about yourself. You're going to be easy to work with, how much you enjoy working with internet people, how you're passionate about helping people use audio and get over their fear of audio, because this is something you live with. And then when you talk about things like this is really good. You're responding to concerns about paying a lot of money for equipment. And you might want to have something in there about deadlines and how what you learned as a musician taught you how to meet deadlines. What we have is Beth Lowell, about me, and then let's look at what might be her backstory. Now, I've known Beth for a long time, and she's taken some courses from me, and we've done things, and we both love animals, so we communicate on Facebook, and I know a little about what she does. And we've never met, although she's nearby in New Jersey, as far as I know. And let's take a look at this. So let's look at what her client's backstory might be. And again, I'm guessing. I'm an artist. I communicate through images. I hate to write. I wish I could, again, this is almost the obverse of Chris's, because Chris was like, I like to write. I just don't like to record audio. I don't like to deal with the audio part. And maybe they say, I wish I could just record my thoughts and have someone turn them into polished prose. I'm concerned that the writer I hire won't get what I'm about, won't project my personality. This is what artists tell me when they worry about writing. Artists don't like to write artist statements. I've heard artists say, forget it. I mean, can't they just look at the work? And they make something up seconds before they hang the show. But it sounds like Beth does want to work primarily with artists based on the about page. If not, that's okay. You could modify this. And then she also refers to, based on what she has, is it's either do they have trouble writing, and also a second part is can't get past the first draft. Everyone who writes knows that you generally spend more time revising and rewriting than writing the first draft. And some people love it. I love rewriting. Some people hate it. So you have to decide, are you appealing to people who they have a great first draft, but it could be better. So let's go through. Now, here we've got a bit of a story. I think you could make it a lot stronger, because what you say here is, I attended a writing workshop and we got a tour and the guide said, you have to choose artist or writer. And you said, no, I could not decide. Anytime you present yourself as puzzled or confused in any way, change that. Think of switching that around to presenting yourself as a strong, confident person, no matter what, because that's what people want to hire, strong, confident people. Not arrogant, although some people like arrogant, but they want someone strong and confident. So what you could do is say, if you want to use this, or maybe even find another story, but you want to say something about being an artist, helping you write, be a good writer. In fact, I was going to suggest something I might have note here. You might want to consider a title like why you should hire an artist to edit your book, write your article, and boost your blog posts. Maybe hiring an artist is the way to go. And even if you're not an artist, is there something an artist can add to the editing process? For instance, maybe as an artist, you enhance the visual quality, and you can, since many people are visual, in some cases, certain audiences, most people will be visual. Will that be an asset? And I don't know that. But it sounds like the real concern they're having is not that. They're just concerned that they don't want to do the work of writing. And I suspect their fears are you're not going to get what they're about. So if that's the case, so that's pretty much what I would suggest, is find a story, turn this into a story of power in some way. And then if you have Kate writing, I can write for you in a well-organized way. Again, I think you could make this a little more upbeat, especially if you're a copywriter. This is good. Tip-top it's okay. Tip-top is one of those words that can be overused, whether you are, if your audience, I see whether your audience, that is, you can edit this. I realize a rough draft, gallerist or curator, and here we go. This is a very, very good paragraph. Because I am an artist, I am familiar with everything that needs to go into your marketing toolkit, from your artist statement and bio to your resume. In fact, so this may be the way you want to present yourself, as being a writer who understands art, understands artists, and wants to work with them. This is a very strong statement. And I'm familiar, my experience includes, and this is where I would not just give a laundry list of experience. I would give something along the lines of what each one does. So how does this help you become a better editor? And how does this help you? Music, for whom? What kind of critic? How does this give you the skill? So maybe have a few of these. I love this Pushcart Prize nominee in the poetry category. This is great. Writing poetry helps all your writing. I know this, and I suspect your people might want to know that also. That award-winning script author. This is really good. There's probably a way to set this up so you give a range without making it look like a laundry list, and maybe pick a few of these and show how they help you become a stronger, more effective editor. I would not put all this on the about page, how you work. I would not put an affordable $40 per hour, definitely not a half hour minimum. There is no way. A half an hour, there's no way. It takes so long. If you have a 30-minute consultation, you should be definitely more than half. It takes forever to set up. Any consultation is an interruption. That's why a 45-minute consult is less than 3 15-minute consults, or a 90-minute consult is less than 2 45-minute ones. So after 30 minutes, the bill will be, I think, 30 minutes. This is way too picky. And if you're really strong, I may not even want to quote your fees. You may want to start quoting by the project and experiment, because I suspect you're not doing justice to your own background, and see a little more. But first of all, you probably have some way of offering benefits that is more specific. And what you want to do is tie that into stories. So my suggestion would be, what do they come to you with if you're an intuitive coach? Is it like, I really, really hate my job? Okay, how about that? That would be something good for an intuitive coach. But I don't know what I want to do next. So what you're giving people is clarity. You're giving them confidence to move forward. And that would be a good example. You would have stories about how you help people. And your best way might be, if you are helping a variety of people, your best answer might be, in that case, to have stories from the different places, the different parts of your service. So the different types of people you help, for example, might be a way of doing that. Oops, I just didn't want to do that. Anyway, that's so we can go from there. Okay, I don't know if that helps, but that's pretty much what I can do with this. Think about maybe come up with 4 or 5 different ways that you work with people, and have a story for each, and use that on your website, in your about page, in your services page. That might be a good way to go from that. But again, tell them stories. And if you have other clients now, they probably come to you with backstories and tell you backstories. And you can take it from there, and you can work directly with their backstory and respond to them as you go. So to get something done. Then the power hour is what most people would benefit from, where we spend 90 minutes going over everything what we've done today, but in infinitely more detail. Well, not infinite, but a lot more detail. You can see how we benefit from having that time. And we also have follow-up with email consultation after. And then for new, feel free to submit anything you'd like me to use as a case study. And as you can see how we help these people help others, this will help you too. So thanks again, and we'll be back in touch. Come see me again on a future video, or even try out a consultation. Thanks again. Have a great day. And she says, stay warm. Yep, it's freezing in Philadelphia, and the Eagles have just finished their parade. Thank you. Alina says, thank you. Thank you for